Let's try this. All afternoon, I was kind of torn between, what should we do tonight? Because I feel a heaviness to really spend some time in real prayer. I don't know what that means, I guess, but decent prayer. And I think I want to do that. But I want to look at this passage of Scripture for just a moment or two before we go to prayer. But Mark chapter 8, beginning with verse number 31, we find these words recorded. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Verse 34, then he called the crowd to him along with the disciples and said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for the soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous, sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them. When he comes, his Father's glory, or when he comes in his Father's glory with the whole, let me try one more time. When he comes into Father's glory with the holy angels. The cross. It's an interesting thing to think about, especially in the day and age that we're living in. And I say it's an interesting thing to think about because in our day and age, in the world that we're living, the cross can mean something different seemingly to everybody. It is not uncommon these days for the cross to be worn as nothing more than a decorative piece of jewelry. And if you're wearing a cross tonight, this is not a slam on that, okay? I'm just saying that many people view it as just a piece of jewelry. You may see it hanging around their neck. You may see it on their ears. You may see it other places. But it's a decorative piece. There are others I've seen. And again, if this is you, this is not a slam. I'm just pointing out some observations. I've seen people with crosses tattooed to their body, right? They're literally picking up their cross and taking it with them, I guess. It's there. I've seen other times where you're driving down the road and there's just a big cross on the side of the road. And it can mean different things to different people. But as Jesus is teaching in this particular setting, at this particular time, he's beginning to introduce the cross in a way that it had never been introduced before. Because in this day and age that Jesus is talking, to the crowd of people that Jesus is talking to, the cross is not what we have made it today. The cross is something that's so far from what we've made it today that the statements that Jesus is making are actually shocking to the crowd who's listening to him. You see, the cross in Jesus' day was a symbol of torture. The cross in Jesus' day was a symbol of death. The cross in Jesus' day was a sign that you had done something wrong. It was reserved for criminals. It was reserved for the hardened of hearts. It was reserved for those who were lawbreakers. And it often served as an example to the rest of society that you better stay in line, and if you get out of line, we've got a place for you. It was a place that reminded people that you can suffer, you will suffer if you're hanging on it. And oftentimes when there was crucifixions, the criminals would remain hanging on those crosses for days afterwards, just as a constant reminder. See, the Roman government, the Roman authorities had the upper hand on the people. They were the authority. And if you got out of line, again, they had a place for you. You didn't talk about the cross as something to be embraced. You didn't talk about the cross as something to pick up and carry with you. You didn't talk about the cross as something that you wanted to have as a part of your life. And then so when Jesus gathers his disciples around him and he begins to talk about crosses, it was shocking to his disciples. First of all, it was shocking to his disciples because a good rabbi, a teacher, would never say or suggest that they were going to the cross. You were a leader. If you had disciples, that meant that you were kind of like top dog in the circle that you ran in. You were the authority. You were the expert on the scriptures. You were the expert on the law. And you gathered disciples around you, and you taught them, and you invested in them. So for Jesus to suggest to his disciples that he was going to go to the cross, that he was going to go and lay down his life, is the first shocking thing that he says to them. And Peter, Peter sees the shock in that, and he says to Jesus, no way, not you. You're going to be a leader, and we're going to be with you, and we're going to conquer Rome, and you're going to come onto the throne, and after you get on the throne, you're going to put us on the throne next to you, and we're going to rule this thing the way it's supposed to be ruled. And Jesus says, Peter, you don't have the mind of God. Get behind me. So the first shocking thing that we see is that Jesus says he's going to the cross. Then it gets even more shocking to those who are listening, because Jesus begins to say things like this. If you want to be my disciple, don't miss this. If you want to follow me, there's a cross in your future. If you really want the life that I have for you, pick up a cross and let's get on the journey. Let's get moving. See, rabbis didn't talk like that. Disciples gathered around the rabbis to learn the Torah, to learn the law, to learn what the prophets said. They didn't gather around rabbis so they could get a death sentence attached to their name. Yet Jesus seems to be wanting to remind us and teach us that discipleship is more than just a 3-step process. So often we want to reduce discipleship down to, well, we got to get them into the church, and if we can get them into the church, then we can get them saved, and after we get them saved, maybe we get them sanctified, and then bam, they got it, and now we put them into that place where we need somebody to serve that nobody else wants to do, and man, they're ready to go. Jesus is saying it's so much more than that. You see, can I just give I know I'm preaching to a Wednesday night crowd, so you could take this and give it to the person that needs to hear it. Discipleship, according to Jesus, number one, discipleship is a lifelong process. So you and I were never supposed to be at the place where we think we got it all figured out. We're never supposed to get to the place where we think, well, I know it so well, I can stop learning now. I don't need to read the Word anymore. I don't need to go to church anymore. I don't need to listen to sermons anymore. I don't need to do this because I've been doing it for 50 years, and now I've got it, and it's all in here, and I can regurgitate it back to you, and I know it. No. Jesus says, deny yourself and follow me. It's a commitment for life. In this day and age, when a rabbi chose disciples to come and follow him, you were attached to that rabbi. If he accepted you and you agreed to go on the journey, you were attached to him for life. For the rest of your life, that rabbi would check on you. The rest of your life, that rabbi would pour into you. He would instruct you. He would help you. He would assist you. You were connected. You followed so closely in his steps that the dust from his sandals would land on you. And what Jesus is saying to us tonight is that discipleship starts with a commitment, a lifelong commitment to Jesus. Going where Jesus goes. Doing what Jesus does. Doing what he asks you to do. being open to the things that he wants to teach you, being willing to learn new things, being willing to follow so closely that you become like the rabbi. Can I remind us tonight, our goal is to become like Jesus. Amen? In everything that we do, to be like Jesus. So the first thing we need to remember about this call from Jesus, it's a call to lifelong devotion and lifelong learning to his ways. And I think most of us probably could accept that pretty easy. Jesus' disciples at the time could accept that message pretty easy. Okay, we're going to go with the rabbi. Wherever he goes, we're going to learn. It's the second thing, and I think it's even in our day and age, it's where it begins to trip people up, because discipleship is also about sacrifice. Do you remember, you do realize, maybe nobody's ever told you this. You say yes to Jesus, you're actually giving up the rights to your life. You're inviting him to come and live in you and to be the center of your life. You get to give up your hopes and your dreams and your wishes. Now, that doesn't mean that God doesn't bring things full circle and give us the desires of our heart when we make him the center of our life, but it isn't about what you want anymore. That's a hard thing for a lot of us to deal with and accept sometimes, isn't it? Don't you like to get your way sometimes? Well, I could go down a long rabbit trail on that one, but I'll stop. We like to get our way, right? Every once in a while, we want to have it our way, right? Jesus says, no. If you're going to follow me, you're going to have to do it my way. There's a certain level of sacrifice. We must walk the same path that he walks. We must do the things that he does. We must practice humility and sacrifice, even if it means death. It's not an option. It is required for those who want to follow Jesus. Sacrifice. Man, that's not a popular word today, is it? But that's what Jesus is demanding. When he looks at his disciples and he says to them, you have to pick up your cross and follow me. He's saying to them, in this journey, there's going to be sacrifice. There's going to be things that you're going to encounter. There's going to be things that happen that you're not going to like. There's going to be painful moments. But I'll be with you. He says whoever loses his life will actually find it. Isn't that a strange statement to make? You got to lose something in order to find it. Well, every time I lose my keys, they're lost. But I'm one up on them. I've got a tile now. You all familiar with the tile? It's this little device you can attach to your keys. And as long as you haven't lost your phone too, you can find your keys. At any rate, Jesus says that there's a certain amount of sacrifice. The last part of it, though, is, and this is maybe the hardest part of understanding Jesus' method of discipleship, that in death ultimately leads to life. Jesus says, you're gonna lay down your life for me. In another time, in another place, he tells them, you will walk the path that I walk. You will go where I go, but somebody else is going to lead you there, and it isn't going to be on your own accord. They're going to lead you there. You're going to lay down your life, and you will die for the cause. I wonder, in our understanding of discipleship in the day and age that we live, if there are many of us who are willing to ultimately say, you know what, even if it comes to death, I'm going with Jesus. I know that that's what Jesus wants of us tonight. You think of being in the season of Lent, you think of this season of preparation and getting ready, and and you begin to think about it, you begin to read the scriptures, you begin to realize everything that Jesus went through. Being flogged and beaten, scourged, and crown of thorns placed upon his head, and body already tired from lack of sleep and probably dehydration, and having a cross put onto your back and taking it to the place where you know when you get there death is coming. And then to hang on a cross with nails driven into his hands and his feet and a spear into the side, and the agony. Are you ready to follow Jesus? See, when Jesus speaks of picking up the cross and following him, he's referring to the exact kind of death that he would die. He does give us the ultimate example, right? So Jesus asks his disciples, or tells his disciples on this day, you really want to follow me? You really want to go where I'm going? You really want to do what I'm doing? Pick up your cross. I love the word. Jesus says, a disciple of mine must deny himself. I don't know that I've fully come to the place where I truly understand the deepest meanings of that word and that phrase. But I do know tonight that the call for all of us, especially as we enter into this Lenten season, it's a call to denial. It's a call to surrendering ourselves. It's a call to emptying our lives in order to find what God has for us. Been working on Sunday's message, and we're going to be talking about some of these very same things. Who rules your life? Who's in charge of you? That's what we're going to talk about. Who's in charge of your life tonight? Jesus says, my way is to let me call the shots. Let me be in control. And you follow wherever I lead you. Go to the places I send you and say the things I tell you to say. And even if it comes to the place where you lose it all, you're actually going to come out the winner. Isn't that a beautiful thought tonight? Death isn't the end. For the believer, it's really only the beginning. Most of you probably have heard by now that the Reverend Billy Graham has passed away today. And one of the things I was reading about him, and I won't get this word for word correct, but he said, one day, a quote of his said, one day you're all going to stand around and say that Billy Graham is dead. But I'm actually going to be more alive than I've ever been. That's the call. Give your life to Jesus now, and you'll have him forever. It's been my prayer, and it is my prayer that that we'll be people who give Jesus all of us. That we'll pick up our cross, that we'll deny ourselves, that we'll follow the path that he's marked out for us, and that we'll be what he wants us to be, even if it means having to give our life. May God help us to be what he wants us to be. Tonight I want to close with some corporate time of prayer tonight. And I'm going to ask everybody who's able this evening just to come join me at the front, either sitting on the front pew or kneeling at the altar tonight. Church, I feel like just in the time that I've been on my knees before God this week that there's a lot of good things happening in the life of our church. There's been some exciting things have taken place, and I feel like if there's ever a time when you need to be on your knees and calling out to God is when you think things are going well, because Satan's always just around the corner to discourage and to fight and to do his thing. And I don't know. I just, maybe nobody else needs it tonight, but I just feel like we just need to pray for encouragement and for strength, for clarity, for direction, for God's will and God's plans to be accomplished. So let's, those who are able tonight, just come and let's just gather around, and I'll clean up my mess up here and make room for somebody. Absolutely.